I'm getting ready to go fly fishing with my brother, who's coming back to fly fishing after a long absence. And he asked me, what should I have on my vest? Well, I'm here to share it with you and get your feedback. Christmas is not the most wonderful time of the year. Instead, it's when you get to go for that great fly fishing trip in the fall. And I'm about to head out to Western North Carolina and Virginia with my younger brother in search of some trout and smallmouth bass. And he hasn't been fly fishing in a long time and asked me for guidance in terms of what should go on the vest. What should he carry with him? So I'm going to talk you through what I've got on my vest, and I welcome your comments on anything I left out. At the end of the video, I'll talk about a couple things that I think are just a waste of time and you shouldn't carry. So the first thing is, on the vest, I like the vest with, you know, a decent number of pockets, but they've got to be right size. If you got 1,000 little small pockets, you're not going to fit anything in those. So let's just talk through what I've got in my pockets, because I'm set up and ready to go. So I like using two different kinds of indicators depending on what I'm doing. So I've got the typical float indicators you can get, and I'll keep those in this pocket. But my go-to indicators, let's just drop those, are these ball Orbi indicators that I think float really well, and I like having them in multiple sizes because I'm getting to be an old guy. Sometimes I can't see things. Moving across, I've got my tippet here. I don't like using the tippet holder because that's outside of a pocket and it bangs on things. And besides, how much tippet do you really need? I use 4X, 5X, and 6X. Now, we've been told that where we're going to go this year, we might need some 3X because the smallmouth get a little bit big. I'll take that with a grain of salt, but I'm taking some with me, and I'll just put that in the back pocket here. In my other bottom pocket, I've got the critical set of split shot in different sizes, and I've got some floatant that I'll use on my furled leader to keep it riding high. Then going through the pockets, typically I only have one fly box, and I'll have both my nymphs and my dries in here. But since we could run into both trout and bass, I've got the bass fly box over here. But it's best not to overload yourself because, well, especially the bass fly box, with all the clousers and things like that, you know, it gets to be a little bit heavy. I also like bringing a small pocket knife with me, and I like the multi-tool version because you may find a use for the pliers at some point. So that's it for these bottom pockets. So what do I have up here? Well, I've got my Frog's Fanny floatant. I use that to dry the flies. You can get that Amadou fly patch, but they're pretty pricey, and they run about 30 bucks. So the Frog's Fanny is good enough for my purposes. When I'm fishing with a crowd, of course, need a small, lightweight FRS radio. And of course, none of these fly vests come with a straight bottom. So I put a piece of zip tie there, and I'll put the radio on that. If you get a fully waterproof one, they end up being pretty heavy. So these inexpensive ones are good enough because you're not going to be that far away from your buddies. Also hanging from, I have two zingers, one on this side. Here's my zinger, here's my nipper, and here's my floatant. And then on this side, I've got the zinger with my forceps. And that's the only thing on this zinger because the forceps are a little bit heavy. Now, I like, when I'm not using the forceps, to attach them to this pocket right here to keep them out of the way and from banging around. I don't really use these pockets for anything. This thing has an interior pocket right here where I'll put my fishing license. Now, one thing you may not have thought of is I like to carry a little cheat card that shows the different sizes of flies, because sometimes it's, unless you're out there all the time, it's hard to tell what size you're actually using. And when you're sharing information back and forth, size is important to be able to tell someone, oh, I've got a size 16 on, or whatever. So I keep that right here where I can get at it. Now, one of the things that's controversial is whether you should carry a net or not. If you carry a net, you can get one of these magnetic releases and an appropriate size net that's going to go on the back. But my perspective is that unless you're fishing for really large fish, you don't really need a net. You can get them up close enough, gently secure the fish, unhook it using barbless hooks, and let it go. But if you're worried about that, then a net is a good thing to have. An optional thing to bring is a thermometer, a stream thermometer. Now I've got this laser one, or IR one, from Harbor Freight, and I'm not going to take it on this trip because I know where we're fishing. But if you're scouting up a river, or you want to see what the temperature is where a stream comes in, then this is kind of a handy thing to have, because particularly for trout, they will congregate where the water is a little bit cooler. And another thing to look for is a patch to hold your flies, either as a staging area or a place to put them quickly before you move on to another fly. Now, 3 things you don't need to waste your money on are as follows. The first thing is a knot tying tool, because you've already got that right here with your forceps. And here's the link to my playlist that shows you how to make all sorts of knots, to include a quick way to tie a dropper on with the forceps. So don't get the knot tying tool. The second thing is, don't get a stomach pump. You don't really need to do that with the fish. If you caught the fish, you know what it bit, so don't get a stomach pump. And the third thing you don't want to waste your time on is a fly threader. Here's a way to quickly fly any size thread with just your eyeballs, but I've also got some links on cheaters that you can put on that'll give you a little bit of magnification, but you don't need the fly threader. Depending on your personal preference and what you like to take with you, you may like a vest that has more pockets. This one, although I'm not going to use them, comes with these large pockets on the outside, as well as large pockets on the inside. So I've got more room than I really know what to do with to carry stuff that I probably don't really need. If you're going to carry a lot of extra stuff, instead of having that weigh down your fly vest all the time, you know, get a side pouch or a backpack, little small day pack, and carry it all in there. For example, if I'm fishing up in the mountains where I know the stream has clear water, then I'll use a life straw to get my water instead of carrying a bunch of water bottles with me. But I would not do that if there's any possibility of agricultural runoff. That's what I take with me. If you guys have advice from myself and my brother, please throw it down below, because we may have left something out that we hadn't thought of and we need.